Imagine living in a country where your hairstyle is chosen by the government, where the clothes you wear could be deemed a threat to national security, where falling in love can be a crime. This isn't a dystopian movie, this is North Korea. Behind the carefully curated images of smiling citizens on state TV lies a brutal reality, particularly for women. And tonight we're diving deep into that reality. You're about to discover 10 shocking rules that women in this hidden dictatorship must follow. Rules so extreme they sound unbelievable, but in North Korea they're just normal life. That's right, you heard that correctly. 15. In North Korea, fashion isn't about self-expression, it's about state control. And nothing exemplifies this more than the government-issued chart dictating the only 15 hairstyles women are allowed to have. Forget about long flowing locks experimenting with vibrant colors or, God forbid, rocking a chic pixie cut. Nope, those are apparently far too subversive for the hermit kingdom. You see, the regime believes that appearance directly reflects your ideology, and a woman who dares to dye her hair or get a trendy haircut, well, that's practically an act of rebellion. And rebellion, even in the form of a bob, can land you in some seriously hot water. We're talking public humiliation, hefty fines, or even a visit from the dreaded secret police. All because you wanted to try something new with your hair. But it's not just about conformity, is it? It's about control. By dictating something as personal as a woman's appearance, the regime asserts its dominance over every aspect of her life. It's a way of saying, we control your body, your choices, your very identity, and for those brave souls who dare to deviate from the approved styles, well, let's just say the consequences serve as a chilling reminder to every other woman. Toe the line, or face the music. That's right, ladies. Put those skinny jeans away because in North Korea, pants are practically considered contraband for women. Unless you've got special permission from the authorities, usually for manual labor, you better be rocking a skirt or a traditional dress, regardless of the weather or your own personal preference. Why? Because in the eyes of the regime, pants are a symbol of Western decadence and therefore a threat to their carefully constructed social order. Wearing pants is seen as a blatant disregard for traditional values, a dangerous embrace of Western influence, and dare I say, a sign of anti-socialist behavior. And let me tell you, anti-socialist behavior is not something you want on your resume in North Korea. Women caught defying this absurd rule have faced a range of punishments. Some have been slapped with hefty fines, others have been publicly shamed or even arrested. And in some cases, they've been forced to write groveling confessions, denouncing their pant-wearing ways and pledging allegiance to the state-approved attire. So, while in most of the world, choosing what to wear is a simple act of personal expression, in North Korea, it becomes a minefield of potential transgressions. And for women, navigating this minefield is just another part of their daily struggle, under a regime that seems determined to control every aspect of their lives. Ah, love. That magical feeling that makes your heart flutter and your soul sing. Well, in North Korea, you better keep those feelings on lockdown because when it comes to matters of the heart, the state has a way of playing the role of the overbearing and frankly, terrifying parent. You see, love in North Korea isn't about stolen glances, romantic dates, or finding your soulmate. No, it's a carefully orchestrated affair, often dictated by politics, military rank, and social class. The regime wants to ensure that marriages strengthen its grip on power, not challenge it. So forget about marrying for love. You're marrying for loyalty to the supreme leader. Now imagine falling head over heels for someone from a different region, or God forbid, a foreigner. That's not just frowned upon, it's practically considered treason. We're talking interrogations, punishments that could land you in a labor camp, and even your family being targeted for your transgressions. The regime's paranoia knows no bounds when it comes to love. They understand that love fosters connections, builds bridges, and opens minds. And those are all very dangerous things in a country built on isolation and control. So they monitor women relentlessly for any whiff of an unapproved relationship, ready to pounce at the slightest hint of affection that might threaten their iron grip. Chapter 4, Military Service, A Woman's Duty, a Nightmare Reality. By the tender age of 17, every young woman in North Korea must answer the call of duty and enlist in the military. And while military service is often seen as a rite of passage for young men in many countries, for North Korean women, it's a grueling and often terrifying experience. We're talking about 7 years of their lives, 7 years of their youth, dedicated to a regime that sees them as little more than expendable assets. Now, life in the North Korean military is no walk in the park for anyone. Food is scarce, training is brutal, and discipline is beyond strict. But for women, the ordeal takes on a whole other level of horrific. Reports of widespread harassment and abuse from male superiors are commonplace, but speaking out is simply not an option. Imagine living in a system where your abusers hold all the power, where reporting them could lead to even worse consequences than enduring their cruelty in silence. It's a heartbreaking and infuriating reality. So while the state touts military service as a noble duty, a chance to prove your loyalty and patriotism, for countless women, it's a living nightmare, a brutal crash course in the depths of the regime's cruelty and its utter disregard for their well-being. Chapter 5. Trapped: Why Women Can't Travel Freely. Imagine a life where you can't just hop on a bus to visit your family in another city, where a simple weekend getaway feels like an impossible dream. That's the reality for women in North Korea, where the freedom of movement is severely restricted, especially for women. In this tightly controlled state, every journey, no matter how small, requires permission. And I'm not talking about a quick call to your parents for approval. I'm talking about official permits, travel documents, and the ever-present scrutiny of the authorities. Even traveling to Pyongyang, the nation's capital, is a privilege reserved for the loyal few, and for most women it remains an unattainable dream. It's like living in a giant open-air prison, where the very act of moving is considered a potential threat to the regime's power. For women, these restrictions are even more suffocating. Traveling alone is rare and often outright forbidden. They're expected to be accompanied by a male relative, or at the very least have explicit permission from a male authority figure. Why? Because the regime understands that movement breeds independence, exposure to new ideas, and connections with the outside world. And those are all things that terrify a dictatorship built on isolation and control. So they keep their women trapped, confined, and cut off from the wider world, a stark reminder that their lives are not their own. Chapter 6. The Dangerous Truth About Foreigners. Imagine a world where simply saying hello to a tourist could land you in hot water, where even making eye contact with a foreigner is considered a risky move. That's the reality for women in North Korea, where interactions with the outside world are strictly controlled, monitored, and often feared. The regime has instilled a deep-seated fear of foreigners, painting them as dangerous influences who threaten the very fabric of their society. They're seen as carriers of subversive ideas, democracy, freedom of speech, human rights, concepts that could unravel the regime's carefully constructed narrative of control. Women in particular are taught from a young age to be wary of any contact with foreigners. They're told that these outsiders are corrupting influences, seeking to undermine their values and lure them away from the righteous path laid out by the supreme leader. And the consequences for breaking this rule, they can be swift and severe. Women caught having even a casual conversation with a foreigner risk being labeled as traitors, collaborators, or worse. They could face interrogations, detentions, and in some cases, simply vanish without a trace. Their fates unknown to their loved ones. The regime's message is clear: trust no one, least of all those who come from beyond our borders. It's a chilling reminder of the climate of fear and paranoia that permeates every aspect of life for women in North Korea. Now imagine a world where indulging in a little entertainment, a Korean drama, a Hollywood blockbuster, even a 5-minute YouTube video, could land you in prison or worse. That's the stark reality for the citizens of North Korea, where the regime maintains an iron grip on information, ruthlessly suppressing any form of media that doesn't align with its propaganda. Forget about Netflix and chill. Accessing foreign media is a serious crime in North Korea, one that can carry horrifying consequences. And it's not just about protecting their citizens from harmful content. It's about maintaining absolute control over the flow of information, ideas, and cultural influences. Women in particular are targeted in this crackdown on foreign media. The regime understands that women are often the heart of a family, the ones who share stories, ideas, and information with their children and communities. They see women as potential agents of change, and they can't risk letting them be exposed to alternative viewpoints that might challenge their authority. So they've made an example of those who dared to defy the ban. Women caught watching South Korean dramas or listening to Western music have faced public humiliation, imprisonment, and even execution. The message is clear. Step out of line and you won't just be silenced, you'll be made an example of. Now you might think that in a society as deeply patriarchal as North Korea, motherhood would be revered, a sacred duty that elevates women to a place of honor. And while it's true that mothers, especially those who produce male heirs, are praised and often held up as symbols of national strength, the reality behind this facade is far more complex and frankly quite sinister. You see, in North Korea, motherhood isn't just a biological reality, it's a tool, a weapon wielded by the state to further its own agenda. Women are pushed into motherhood early, their worth often measured by the number of children, particularly sons, they bring into the world. They become, in essence, instruments of the state, their reproductive capabilities fueling the regime's insatiable thirst for manpower and unwavering loyalty. But here's the catch. This reverence for motherhood comes with a hefty price. If a woman falls out of favor politically, if her loyalty to the regime is questioned, her children can become pawns in the state's cruel game. They can be denied opportunities, subjected to surveillance, or even punished for their mother's supposed transgressions. So while the regime might praise mothers and shower them with hollow accolades, the reality is that they are trapped in a system that views them as little more than vessels for the state's ambitions, their lives and the lives of their children inextricably bound to the whims of a ruthless dictatorship. Imagine a life where raising your voice, sharing your opinion, or even laughing a little too loud could land you in trouble. Welcome to North Korea, where self-expression, particularly for women, is seen as a dangerous threat to the regime's carefully constructed facade of order and control. In this tightly controlled society, women are expected to be seen and not heard. They're taught from a young age to suppress their individuality, to blend in, to never question the wisdom of the party or the pronouncements of their supreme leader. Confidence, assertiveness, a quick wit, qualities we often admire in women, are seen as dangerous liabilities in North Korea. They are signs of independent thought, of a mind not entirely under the regime's control, and that's unacceptable. Women who dare to speak their minds, who challenge the status quo, or who simply don't conform to the rigid expectations placed upon them, face swift and often brutal consequences. They can be publicly shamed, denounced by their peers, and forced to endure humiliating self-criticism sessions, where they are made to confess their supposed wrongdoings and pledge unwavering loyalty to the regime. This system of public humiliation is designed to break their spirits, to instill fear and obedience. It teaches women that their voices don't matter, that their thoughts are dangerous, and that their silence is the only acceptable form of compliance. Now we've covered some truly horrific rules tonight, but brace yourselves because this one is arguably the most chilling aspect of life under the Kim regime. It's called 3 generations of guilt, and it's a policy so ruthlessly effective, so morally reprehensible, that it sends chills down my spine every time I think about it. Here's how it works. If a woman in North Korea commits a crime against the state, whether it's speaking out against the regime, attempting to defect, or even just being suspected of disloyalty, her punishment doesn't end with her. Oh no, it extends to her entire family, encompassing her children, her parents, and even her grandparents. That's right, 3 generations. Guilty by association, condemned for the actions of one individual. They are all rounded up, torn from their homes, and sent to brutal labor camps, where they endure unimaginable hardship, often working themselves to death in service to the very state that ripped their lives apart. This policy is the ultimate form of control, a terrifying reminder that in North Korea, your actions have consequences that extend far beyond your own life. It's a system designed to crush dissent, to suffocate even the slightest whisper of rebellion by holding entire families hostage to the regime's whims. The message is clear. Step out of line and you don't just risk your own freedom, you risk condemning your entire bloodline to a life of unimaginable suffering. It is without a doubt one of the most chilling and inhumane policies ever devised. The stories we've uncovered tonight paint a bleak picture of life for women in North Korea, a country where fear is a constant companion and basic freedoms are nothing more than distant dreams. But even in the darkest corners of the world, hope flickers. There are those who risk everything to shine a light on these injustices, to amplify the voices of the oppressed, and to fight for a day when all North Korean women can breathe free. If stories like this fascinate you and you want to uncover more hidden truths from around the world, don't just scroll away. Hit that like button. It helps more than you think. And if you haven't already, subscribe now and join our journey into the unknown. The next story might just change how you see the world.